It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague in the Danger Zone in Rainford, it's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I think we're still in that period at the start of the year where the first time you see someone that year, you wish them all the best. I personally stop that around the third week of January. So if I've not seen you between January the 1st and the 20th, you're just getting a hi. If I see you before then, you'll get a all the best.
The way 2021 has started here in the UK and in many other countries, it can pretty much get to fuck. So it needs to buck up its ideas because it ain't getting all the best at the moment.
No. All the worst. Yeah, most of the worst, should we say? Yeah,
exactly. Neil, it is not just Wildcard weekend, but I don't know if you've noticed this. People have been calling it Super Wildcard weekend.
Yeah, this is supersized wildcard. This is, you've gone from... You had your regular size meal. Then they had a medium. Then you had a large. But then they went supersized. And that's what the playoffs have done this time.
They have. And in the AFC, that's a great thing. Because that means we get the Indianapolis Colts in. However, in the NFC, we get the Bears and the Washington football team. And it didn't quite work out how we planned.
And by the way, the prize for finishing second in the AFC this year, the garbage spot on Saturday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, congratulations. Congratulations, AFC. It's still 1960 and you're not relevant. Bravo. Unbelievable. Anyway, before that, though, Neil, which we will talk about all the games, and we have picked a DFS team, we've combined your passions in life to get interviewed today. Please explain.
Well, one of my big passions, as we know, is football. I'm talking about it now. But the other one, and I make no bones for this, and I do not apologise for this, is that I've been watching Star Trek for most of my life. Since I was about 4 years old, I can remember watching the original series. I have developed a love and appreciation of all manners of Star Trek. And one of them is Star Trek Voyager. Now, through the course of Twitter and through various other interactions, I have managed to secure us a chat with Mr. Garrett Wang, who was Ensign Harry Kim in all 7 series of Star Trek Voyager. He's a huge football fan, he's a huge fantasy football fan, and he has been very, very gracious to spend some of his valuable time chatting with me and Paul.
It's insane, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen right now. And joining us now on Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch, it's an honour to speak to Mr. Garrett Wang, best known as Ensign Harry Kim from Star Trek Voyager, co-host of the Delta Flyers podcast, and why he's on this show, because he's a huge fan of football and especially fantasy football. Garrett, how are we today?
I'm doing excellent, thank you.
Simple first question, I guess. Who is your American football team?
Well, initially I was a big fan of the Raiders to begin with, and then that was the years when it's funny, John Gruden is now coach again, but when John Gruden was the coach initially, the first run, that's when I was a fan of the Raiders. And then, I probably, enjoyed following the Seahawks when they won the Super Bowl that year. And then I think I always tell people that I try not to have a favorite team because it affects your betting. If you're betting football for money, when you have a favorite team, and let's say your favorite team is the Browns before this season, okay, and you sit there and you think, wishful thinking, oh yes, they're definitely going to beat the Ravens this year. I know it, and it's just like you can lose a lot of money this way when you have a favorite team. So what I try to say is I'm a fan of all teams. I like watching players. I follow different players, and clearly if you're a fantasy football player, you definitely follow players as opposed to the team. The only team I had an issue with was Washington. Mm-hmm. Washington, because that team, the name Redskins, as much as a Washington diehard fan will say it's not racist, it is racist. Mm-hmm. It is a term that was used for a Native American. right? And you call him a redskin because the skin was, that darker reddish color or whatever. And it's definitely a derogatory term, I mean, you wouldn't walk up to an African American or someone from Africa and say, "Hey, black skin, how are you?" I mean, that doesn't work. You're going to get punched. Mm-hmm. So I, for the longest time, had an issue with that. And if you do the research, the Washington football team, the owner or the founder of that team was probably one of the most racist human beings alive. He was the last owner to allow black players on his team. The federal government actually told him, you have to have a black player. You cannot have all white players. And if it was up to him, he would only have white players until he died. And so I really, really had an issue with that team, mainly because of the name. And now they've gotten rid of the name, so I'm okay with them now.
So good. You mentioned, I guess, gambling. Garrett, did you have a team that you liked this year in terms of that angle? So was there a team who you thought you would suggest you made more money on than some others?
Well, my gambling, I stopped. My gambling for football consisted of. There are certain people they bet every week. They'll bet a parlay. They'll bet 5-team parlay of 5 different teams, picking the winners of those teams, and they'll do prop bets. Who's going to score the first rushing touchdown? I don't do any of that. The betting that I did do, and I've actually since stopped, was only on the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So from the year 2000 all the way to the year 2018, I picked the correct winning team every year for the Super Bowl. And I would bet one large bet anywhere between $5,000 to $25,000 on that game. And I won all the way up until the year that the Patriots played the Seahawks, and they intercepted the Seahawks in the end zone. Yeah. They're like, what? You guys remember that game? They're 3 yards away. It's like, hand it to beast mode. Yeah. Hand it to the guy that drags 5 players with him. That's probably the right move to go with, right? But no, they actually passed it. And I understand the mindset of the coach, because he kept thinking, they're thinking beast mode, so we're going to pass it. But passing is so risky. Anything can happen. You know what I'm saying? Literally anything can happen. So
we've noticed there's an awful lot of people, especially when they play against the Patriots, think they have to be cleverer than Bill Belichick, and it's not a winning strategy, because you're probably not.
No. I mean, truly, if you're a coach, the name of the game is who's got the hot hand, right? Let's say you've got 3 running backs. You run the starter. If for some reason he's not gaining any yards, go to the second string quarterback. See how he's doing. Maybe he's got the hot hand. Go with him for that game, because each player has an up and down day, right? One player might play amazing, and then the next player is just absolutely, he looks like a beginner, like he's never played football before. And so as a coach, you really have to look which player is really working today. But typically, you really rely on your stars, the ones that are consistent, and that's what you're looking for, right? And that also translates into fantasy football. Who is consistent, My downfall this year is that I drafted, oh my Lord, my 2 wide receivers that I drafted happened to be, let's see, Tyler Lockett in the 5th round. Very inconsistent. He was getting, one game he'd get 17 points, and the next game he'd get 2 points. And it's like, what's happening? Marquise Brown, round 6 for the Baltimore Ravens. Good Lord, that guy didn't even show up until week 15, and it's just, you're sitting here expecting that these players were going to be amazing, and they didn't do anything, And also, it killed me because my number 1 pick was Ezekiel Elliott. And, of course, everyone knows once Dak Prescott went down, everybody went down on that team. The Cowboys were considered lepers of the fantasy football league. Nobody wanted to touch them. So I basically had 3 duds in my starting lineup, and that really, really hurt. And I also relied on the prior season success of Lamar Jackson, and I grabbed him round 2. I grabbed him early. And see, that's a big no-no, because instead of grabbing Lamar, if I was smart and said, look, I'll get a QB in a later round, I could have easily had DeAndre Hopkins, which was the next pick right after my Lamar pick. And Hopkins, of course, we all know, it doesn't matter what team that guy's on, he's going to score points. You know? So this season's been this season was a little wacky for me. Last year I was a runner-up. I was in the finals and I lost. And the prior year I made the playoffs, but got knocked out in the quarterfinals. And the first year that I played was 3 years ago. I didn't make the playoffs. And this year I didn't make the playoffs, clearly, because my team was just horrible.
They do say, you can't win your draft in the first round, but you can certainly lose it. And
exactly.
Anyone who talks like Zeke, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey this year, I don't think too many people. I mean, our league, our main league, Paul and I were the 1 and 2 seed, and neither of us made the playoff, the final game, because who's like it was Alvin Kamara I was going up against, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In week
it's one
6.
of those things, right? It's tough. It's tough. Is that league you've been around a while then, Garrett, or is it a new one that you joined?
Yeah, I've been in 2 leagues. The one that I've been around, like I've been playing for 4 years. This is my 4th year playing, and the league that I've been in for 4 years has been around for, I think, 10 or 11 years now. And how I got into this league was back before I acted on Voyager. I did a graduate student film for USC Film School director, and it's essentially that director and all his buddies from USC Film School that started this league many years ago. And he called me up and said, hey, we had somebody drop out of our league. Do you play fantasy football? And I said, no, I don't. And he says, well, I'm giving you an invite if you'd like to join. And I said, okay, well, why not? I might as well give it a shot now. So, and I started playing, and both of you know, it's so addictive. It's just so addictive. I mean, once you start playing, then you start thinking about, okay, how many other leagues can I get into right now? Can I play multiple leagues? So I'm in 2 leagues right now. And this one that I've been for 4 years, it's the money league, the one that we all put money into. And it's reasonable. It's always been $100. This year we did $150. We might increase it again. So first place gets money, second place gets money, third place gets money, and that's it. I think it should be first, second, third, and then the winner of the consolation bracket should get their money back. Okay, for that. I think that's fair, right? So I've suggested that to the league. I think they've approved it for next year. But you're right. If you were 1 or 2 in this year and had McCaffrey or Barkley, you were done. I mean, literally, people. But let's face it, guys. There was no preseason. There was no preseason game for these guys to even work out, or even they weren't. Nobody was in shape. And when you're not in shape athletically, physically, injuries are going to happen. That's just the bottom line. And that's all due to COVID. So really, this is, if anybody, whoever wins this season, whoever the winners are of this season's fantasy football leagues, there should be an asterisk next to their name, which is like, won during COVID, not really a winner, but he won, he got lucky, and that's it. I think one thing that I'm going to follow, a piece of advice that I was going to follow this year that I didn't, is that I'm going to wait until week 3 before I use any waivers. Because what happens is, after week 1, I'm already throwing so many waivers out. My waiver priority is always 10, 11. I'm at the bottom the entire season. And if you wait to week 3 or 4, you're going to have the first priority, right? Yeah. And so that when Saquon goes down or McCaffrey goes down, you can grab Mike Davis before anyone else does. You can grab, that. And I think that is really the wise thing to do, is just save your waiver priority, the first pick, for week 2, 3, 4, 5. Just wait as long as you can, just because that is when, things shake out and people realize what's going on. You have a better feel of who's doing well or who's not, instead of just thinking, oh my gosh, this player's not doing well, I need to dump him quickly. Because sometimes it takes time for a player to get up to speed, right? Sometimes they never get up to speed. In fact, I drafted Zach Ertz as my tight end, who did absolutely nothing. My God. Well, then again, let's face it, that quarterback was running for his life like the entire season until they got Jalen Hurts in. And then all of a sudden, they started winning, right? They started connecting. Oh, it's just so crazy.
There's an Eagles fan here, Garrett, who, not just for fancy reasons, was painful to watch Zach Ertz on a weekly basis. Because it was, as I'd say, it was like late era Jason Witten. He used to be, catch ball, fall down. But then when he stopped catching the ball, it's like, seriously, Zach, you're killing me. You scored winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. That was lovely. But this week, you're killing me.
I mean, it got to the point, Neil, I kept thinking, Zach, where are your hands? Have you misplaced your hands? I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, do you know what game you're playing? What is going on? I mean, this is somebody who really you could rely on the past few seasons. And then now it's just like he just forgot how to play football. It was unbelievable. Or they just decided, let's throw it to Dallas Goedert. Let's throw it to the backup tight end. And then all of a sudden he would be scoring points, right? But with injuries and COVID, I can't even tell you how many times I thought, COVID was putting someone out or a team wouldn't be. And I ended up dropping a player. And it turns out that player ended up playing. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, I couldn't get things straight. It was very, very confusing this year, for sure.
I do know, just going back to what you were saying about, the payout structure for leagues you're in. Someone who we've had on the podcast in the past, a fellow called Dave Damashek, he's in a league with some like Hollywood types, like with Jimmy Kimmel and John Hamm. They have an odd number of teams in their league. And what they do is on draft night, the previous year's winner tells one of them that they're not taking part in that season. But they don't find out until the night of the draft. So they all turn up, and then he just goes, okay, this year, it's you.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. I know who Damashek is. Yeah, I'm familiar with who he is. But
so this year they kicked Bill Simmons out from the ringer. So Bill was supposed to be doing it and he was kicked out. And he was like, I'm not coming. And he was like, I'm not coming back. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. Right. So
how do you guys in your leagues that you're in, is your draft order determined by how people finished the prior season? So if you're finished last, you get the first pick for the following year? Or do you guys do a random, throw all the names into a hat and pick out the order?
So in our main one, we do names in a hat. I think me and Neil are also in a couple of dynasty drafts. So you kind of keep the squad you had last year into the next year, and then it's based purely on record. Which is good and bad, because like you've got if you're the first pick, it means you've got a terrible roster, which you're probably not going to be able to fix with only drafting rookies. So it becomes a 5. You were literally in a kind of Cleveland Browns rebuilding since 1967 kind of situation where I know Neil this year me and Neil in the dynasty one that we're in together, as we have 2 different teams. Neil was the second worst, and I'm like the 4th worst. And the pair of us are like, our teams are really bad, and there's not really much we can do. We can gradually get one better player next year, and then possibly one better player the year after. It's a hard thing, but the other on the redraft one, we just stick names in a hat, and one year you're lucky, and one year you're not.
But you're lucky if you draft well.
Yeah, so would you say that it's better to be in a league that's not dynasty, especially if you're in the bottom of the pack then? Or do you prefer playing dynasty? I don't know.
I've enjoyed, so this is, my dynasty in that league is even worse because I took over from, in similar to you did on the USC, I took over from someone else had a team and they left. So I just took over their roster. Like Paul, here's your team. This guy was a big Minnesota Vikings fan, so I've got this team littered with Minnesota Vikings. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of okay, kind of not okay. But it does make you try and understand rookies better, I guess. But also that a situation where although this year kind of is slightly different, I guess, is that usually rookies aren't great in fantasy. They're not usually people you want to pick up. So you're actually then drafting someone who you think might be good in 2 years, rather than so you like draft someone, you put them on your bench. Your benches are bigger in the dynasty, or ours are anyway.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of like have someone. So like so the guy I had drafted Lamar Jackson the first year, but then didn't play and played Kirk Cousins. Then when I took over the league, I took over his team. I got to play Lamar in his MVP year because he drafted him thinking that. So he was quite lucky, I guess.
Whereas I hate Dynasty with all the intensity of 1,000 Suns because I suck at it. Whereas redraft, it's renewal. It's a chance to it's a clean slate with all these players that haven't burnt me too badly in the other league.
Right. It's funny when you mention the team you inherited, that prior person that had that team was a big Minnesota fan. So in the league that's the money league for me, there's one player that he only drafts Patriots players for every position because he's a huge Pats fan. And I'm going to say right now to anybody listening, that is, if you just cannot do that. If you are a fan of one team and you draft every position from that team, you will lose. Is all I'm going to say. You're not going to win. You're not going to win the whole thing.
Unless it's the Chiefs.
Yeah. Unless you
drafting the Chiefs, you
might be all right this year with the Chiefs, but only 1 year, right? You might get away with
it. Right.
You mentioned that you're in a league with the USC stuff. It'd be remiss of us not to talk a little bit about Star Trek. Would there ever be a situation where there'd be a Star Trek Voyager fantasy football draft, or are a lot of the actors who were in Voyager not really American football fans?
Well, it's a limited number of people that are huge football fans that are Star Trek actors. I'm going to tell you from my show, from Voyager, it's going to be myself and Robert Beltran, so Chakotay. Mm-hmm. Chakotay knows football very well. He was when he was in high school, he was a starting quarterback on his high school football team, so he knows football in and out, backwards and forwards. But everybody else, Robbie McNeil is a huge college football fan, but not NFL, right? I know from Enterprise, Scott Bakula, Captain Archer, he's a very big NFL fan, so he would do well. But typically, I would say out of each cast, there might be only one or two. So, yes, there could be a fantasy football league of Star Trek actors from various Star Trek shows, but not from one show. You're not going to be able to do it. I do know that the Marvel group, there's a Marvel fantasy football charity league with different Marvel actors, that are in that 14-person league, and they do that every year. And that's given me some interest in possibly reaching out to those fantasy football fans that are Star Trek actors of various Star Trek shows, and maybe creating a charity league to give it a shot. Maybe duplicate the Marvel League. It'd be fun. It'd be a lot of fun.
See, one thing obviously that I've noticed from watching Star Trek, and I know you were a fan of the original series, and I'm glad that we park our car in the same garage about the fact that Code of Honor is one of the worst bits of television ever created for Next Generation. One thing I've noticed is that they don't play football in the future. There's been occasional mentions of baseball, and I just wonder, currency has been abolished in the future. So obviously they're thinking, well, NFL is all about money, so they don't play it anymore now they haven't got it.
Yeah, it is a little weird, right? Why wouldn't football be represented in Star Trek? I don't know. That should be something that you see some version of. You guys remember Starship Troopers, the movie?
Oh, God,
they had a version of football that they were kind of playing in there, right? They had something like that. But Star Trek typically, and it's also Star Wars too. You don't see any real sports. And then, from the UK, do you ever see sports in Doctor Who? I don't think so. Doctor Who doesn't really show any sporting activities as far as I know. But maybe there's an episode where they played cricket or something. I don't know.
I was just saying, I'm sure was it Peter Davison used to wear a cricket jumper?
I think that was more coincidence than anything else, right?
Yeah.
Do you find, do you find that obviously that you could say the two fan bases, obviously, of football and Star Trek, they don't necessarily marry up all the time. I can comfortably say this: there's jocks and there's nerds.
Yes. It's funny because we've been recording the last few episodes of Delta Flyers. In the intro, I've been bringing up football, and McNeil has been making fun of me. He's like, "You always got to bring it around to football, and it's something that none of our listeners care about, Garrett." And I look at him, I said, "Robbie, I just want you to know, here is the fan. This is a football fandom group. Here's the Trek fandom group. There is a small intersection of the two, but that is it. But there is an intersection. I would say 10% of Star Trek Rabbit fandom is also a fan of football," is what I told him. I said, that's about it. 5 to 10%, I would have to say. So it's sad, that's the way it is. But there are still people that are definitely fans. What I want to ask you two is this. When Next Generation first came on, were you angry that Patrick Stewart's name was Jean-Luc Picard? I mean, was it something? Because let's face it, the English and the French have been battling forever. In the olden days, there was a lot of animosity between the two countries. So, is that something that annoyed UK, English fans of TNG, that there was this individual named Jean-Luc Picard who's clearly someone that was born and bred in England?
When you say, did it annoy me at the time, it still annoys me now. Next Generation's nearly 40 years old. It is odd that you get them called say Jean-Luc Picard, and he's in the first series as well. There was he dropped a little bit, when something back, it'd be nerd, a bit like, and then they just decided, oh, do you know what, balls to it, he'll just be English.
I have to say though,
with his brother, Jeremy Kemp, another English actor, pretended to be French. Patrick's like, nah.
I'm not gonna
I have to say, because I guess it was when I watched that, Neil. You're much deeper into it than I am. It was on like BBC Two. I was probably like 13, 14 maybe, I think I'm going to say. And my dad watched it and I watched it as well. I didn't really join the dots. And then I remember meeting Neil maybe years later and then bringing it up and I'm going, oh yeah, he was French. Yeah, that's stupid. Why? Like, and I'm like, it's like 10 years later and it's like it's like you listen, to the likes of your podcast, Garrett, or you listen to like West Wing Weekly or like a Binge Mode when they talk about certain shows and they go into depth on them and they say something about that show or that episode and you go, I didn't think that at all. Why did I not notice that? Like, and you like completely it's gone over your head and you're like, oh my God, yeah, you're absolutely right.
I've seen, I think it was at a convention, it was Marina Sirtis was talking about the fact that she had to put an accent on because they wouldn't let her speak in a normal voice because they went, we've got an Englishman already. And she's like, yeah, but he's playing a Frenchman. Yeah, but you need to put an accent on, so...
It's my favourite one of them is without a shadow of a doubt Highlander, which has Christopher Lambert, one of the most Frenchmen ever, being Scottish, and Sean Connery being Portuguese. Like, why? Yes. Like, what's the purpose of this? Why this is a made up story that you've described. Yeah. You could change everybody's nationality if you so choose, but you've chosen not to, and you still want Lambert as a Frenchman to play a Scottish guy who's being taught by Sean Connery, who isn't Scottish. Very bizarre. Yeah.
But I will say that is one of my favorite movies. I mean, that's one of my guilty pleasure films to watch, Highlander, even though the accents are all wrong. Okay, I want to play a little game with you guys. Okay, if you were to rename the character Captain Jean-Luc Picard in a proper English name, what is the most English name that Patrick Stewart's character should come up with? Think about it for a second, and I want to hear each of you, and I'm going to say I'll be the third to come up with my English name of what the most English first and last name that you can think of. Okay? Neil, you want to go?
Reg Smith.
Reginald Smith.
Yeah. Reginald Smith.
Reginald Smith. Okay. All right.
You basically just called him, just so you know, he's basically just called him Elton John. I think it would be something It would be something like Robert Smythe. I wouldn't even go
Okay.
Smith, Neil. I'd go SMYTH. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Go like that.
Okay.
But then again, I want I'd expect it's like Serene McKellen, right? You'd want him to be like Yorkshire. So I was trying to think of a Yorkshire name, but I couldn't. I couldn't think. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like although this is a real person or was a real person, as he's passed away now, like Fred Dibner, like that should be his name, right?
Captain Harry Ramsden.
Yeah, again, that's a real person.
Okay, you guys ready for my name?
Yeah.
What I would rename him? Here we go. Captain Nigel Higginbottom.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. See, this is the problem. Because this is the problem when you know that the guy's been thinking about this for a long time and he gave us 20 seconds to come up with it. That, like, he's obviously thought about this and done it. And we're doing, like, I've got 10 seconds, think of a name, and you blank. It's like you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something, and you don't know the answer to the 64,000.
See, now I really need to hear Patrick Stewart say that name.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
My life won't be complete until...
No, definitely. If it's not Nigel, it would be Graham. It's either Graham or Nigel for me. It's just your quintessential English first name. So okay.
We talk about obviously the podcast you do with Rob Doug Neil, expertly modelled with your cap. Paul and I started working together about 20 years ago, and I guarantee this, we're still friends of a fashion now, but we wouldn't be getting together to talk about our work from 20 years ago. So was obviously, the last year, whatnot, it's been a time for reflection and a time to take on new activities. Was doing the podcast something that you wanted to do for ages, or was it literally just that you were still speaking to Robert and just went, should we watch the show again? I mean, because just listening to the pod, I wonder whether he's actually watched it at all, because he never seems to remember anything.
Yes. No, it's definitely an idea I've had for over a decade now. It's been in my head, and I kept, thinking, okay, I want to do some type of show where I review all the episodes of Voyager. And it was going to be, my original idea was it was going to be a solo effort. It was going to be me. It wasn't going to be myself with anybody else. And it's interesting because I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Evil Dick. He won the Big Brother series, season 8. And Evil Dick, I've known for many years. And so Dick calls me up and he says, "Hey man, you know what I've been doing, right?" And I go, "What?" "I've been doing recaps of Big Brother and Survivor, where I talk about it and I bring guests on, and my idea is to kind of have you do a recap of Star Trek Discovery, the newest Star Trek that's out." And I said, "Okay." It's funny that you mentioned that, Dick, because my idea has been to do a recap show of all the Voyager episodes. So I've always thought about that. And he said, well, would you be interested in doing this recap of Discovery? I said, yeah, I would, but as long as you don't veer into Voyager episodes, I want to save that for my own project. And he says, no problem. And then he said, I think it's important that you get a co-host. And so I was like, oh, gosh. All right. Okay. Well, let me think. And so his first suggestion was, to get like Marina Sirtis or somebody from TNG. And I said, well, that's going to be tough. I don't know if these guys are going to be interested, to be honest. And Megan, my significant other, she's the one that recommended Aaron Eisenberg from Deep Space Nine, who played Nog. And I said, that's a good idea. That's a good suggestion. I get along with Aaron. I think that would be, and I think maybe he would have the time to do this. And I called him up and he said, yeah. So that's how it first started. We had a podcast, a video blog, or whatever you want to call it, that was called the Alpha Quadrant. We called it the Alpha Quadrant. And we did that for a little bit, like maybe a year and a half. But then we had some issues where miscommunication, some hurt feelings, basically, and ED basically fired Aaron. He was like, okay, you're done. And Aaron was like, what? And so Aaron said, okay, fine, I'm going to go do my own thing. And he asked me to come along with him. And I thought about it, and I actually ended up turning that down. And he went ahead and did his show, The Seventh Rule. with Sirach Lofton, who played, Cisco's son on DS9, and so that is the podcast that he ended up doing. And then I was just sitting there feeling just, oh well, I gave it a shot, but let me maybe work on a Voyager one. And then the pandemic hit. Then once again, Megan was like, maybe you can ask Robbie, because I'd always felt that makes the most sense. Because if you talk about Star Trek duos, everyone thinks Paris and Kim. I mean, that's a pretty good, combination of people. And I thought, hey, he's probably not doing anything right now. And it was true. He was just sitting around twiddling his thumbs. So he agreed. And so that's how the Delta Flyers began. And when we were thinking of a name, once again, Megan was the one that was like, what about the Delta Flyers? And I didn't know this, but there is already a podcast in existence called The Delta Flyer, singular, right? Without the S at the end, by two fans of Star Trek Voyager. And they did, I think they reviewed up to season 2, maybe season 3, then they stopped. So they really haven't gotten around to finishing it, but that was already in existence. So I said, well, that's okay. We'll just call it the Delta Flyers. We're plural. They're singular. That's the difference. And it makes sense because let's face it, it's Tom Paris that designed, along with Harry, the Delta Flyer shuttle. So I thought that was a great name. And so we started in May, and we haven't looked back. We've been churning along, chugging out these episodes, and they're available on iTunes, Spotify for free. We have a free version, but we have an extended bonus version that we offer to Patreon patrons on Patreons. They can subscribe. There's different levels of subscription. The highest level is the Admiral's level. Those guys get an hour to 2 hour call each month with Robbie and I and them, on a Zoom call where we're just discussing Star Trek and life and everything like that. So, so it's been a lot of fun. We've been having a great time with it.
I've listened or read various autobiographies, especially William Shatner. I mean, he's probably due to put another one out at any minute. I think he's up to 7 at the moment. And the one thing he always talks about is that when you're a jobbing young actor, you do a job, you get a series, it's great. You say to your friend, the people at the end of it, okay, that's great, we'll keep in touch, and then you never do. You're on to the next job. Whereas the nature of Star Trek, what it has become, is that almost through no fault of your own, you all seem to keep in touch because you have conventions and the Star Trek cruise and whatnot, and it's obviously hearing that it's something that you're proud of, so that you're happy to do it, and that it's this sense of wonder almost coming across from yourself and from Robert as well, in that okay, we're going to watch this episode, and geeks like me just assume I can sit there and quote lines back at you. You might have gone, what the fuck is he talking about? I can't remember that. But we just, fans just assume, they'll remember all this. But then sitting down and saying, we're going to rewatch this, and basically hear him say, I haven't got a frigging clue what's going on, what this is about. The most recent one, the Investigations, I think it was, which is one of the biggest Paris episodes in the first 2 series. And the preamble, he's like, I am looking forward to this, I've got a clue what it's about. And I'm sitting there listening to going, it's your show. This was you.
Yeah. I'm gonna argue. I'm gonna just say, Robbie, back while we were filming in the 90s, he was juggling a family. He had 3 small children. So if you think about that, most of your life is just, oh my gosh, taking care, changing diapers or doing this and running this errand and cleaning up around the house and dealing with the wife, so I feel like that was such a distraction for him. And he's not against sci-fi, but it's not his preferred genre. You know what I'm saying? So if sci-fi was something that he loved above all else, I think he would remember a lot more. But because of that and the juggling of all the kids and the family, it was a job, so it'd be tough for you guys, either of you, just to remember what you did 20 years ago on a job when let's say you were working at Harrods department store or something like that. Are you going to remember what you did on Tuesday in 1997 at Harrods? No, you're not going to remember, so it's kind of like, well, it's circumstantial, right? That's what happened to him. So I'm going to stick up for Robbie and say that, but it is funny when he sits there and goes, I don't remember anything about this episode.
That is.
Were you in this episode? I don't know. You were the star of this episode. Was I?
Yeah, I think
but it's been fun. Yeah.
That's it, Neil. I think Garrett's hit the nail on the head. We definitely won't be doing Tuesdays at the Odeon, where we used to work in the cinema, because I am not 100% sure what we were doing as in '99 when Lord of the Rings came out or whatever it was, or Matrix. I don't remember what we did that first Tuesday it came out, mate. So we're probably going to have to put that one on the back burner.
I can tell you we were stealing sweets and popcorn.
Yeah, that was probably right. Yeah. That's probably right. Yeah.
Wait, how long have you two known each other now?
It'll be 20 years in March.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
The first time we actually met was a mutual friend. Brought us together. We were going to watch Liverpool Roma.
Yeah, we're watching a soccer game. Yeah, exactly.
Now,
a footy.
Now, I hate Liverpool.
Yeah.
I speaking, as
wasn't for you, was it?
I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, so I actually hate football because it hates me. But yeah, we started watching that, and then a few months later, we started working together again through this mutual friend who neither of us speak to anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
ironically. And yeah, he's followed me around ever since.
Yeah, that's...
How old were you two at that point 20 years ago? What are we talking about?
18, 19?
I was 20.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I was 20, yeah.
I'm
a little bit older, yeah.
And I'm not.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so
Wow.
so we it was like a university or college job at the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
to earn money to get drunk.
Right, so what city were you guys in
Liverpool.
when you watched this
Liverpool.
game? You were in Liverpool. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I
So
still live on the
outskirts.
outskirts, whereas he lives way down south.
Yeah, I don't live
So
in that.
you were born and bred in the Liverpool area, but yet you do not like the Liverpool football team then?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
That is what he's saying.
that is what I'm saying.
Exactly what he's saying.
I
He
did
doesn't like
used to
either
work
of the
for
two
them.
Liverpool teams.
Yeah, I did used to work for them,
Both,
and I worked for both of them actually, and only Liverpool politely asked me to leave their employ and not come back, whereas Everton were always a lot more welcoming and took me back on countless occasions, usually for like seasonal work. But no, my granddad on my mother's side was a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and he was the only one in the family because the rest of them all supported Sheffield United.
Okay.
And he died when I was 12, so I said, I'll support them. I'll take this mantle on. And the first year I supported them, they got to 2 cup finals, and I thought, this is good. I like this. And the 27 years since have been a continual nightmare.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
How
many teams
That's
are
one of
in
the reasons you drift to American football, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many teams? How many soccer football teams are there in the UK total?
92 professional teams
Professional one. What is
across
it?
In the
4
Premier
divisions.
League,
No,
there
so
are
there's
19?
20. So there's 20 in the Premier League. Then there's a division below that, 24. Division below that, 24. And then I don't know what is it, 22 in the third, the fourth?
22, 24, 24.
24. Yeah. So and then there's teams
you
who are
rattle
not
off-
in those leagues who are also professional.
Okay, can you rattle off all the Premier League teams right now quickly? Is it
Go on,
easy
mate.
or no?
Could I do it? Yeah, I could probably.
Can
do
I-
it.
wait, can I try?
Go
Can I
Liverpool, Man U,
Yeah,
Man City,
Yep.
Chelsea, Arsenal. I'm deliberately making Everton last. Everton. No, I'm not. Everton. Burnley.
West Brom.
Yeah.
That's for Chelsea. West Brom. Brighton.
Yeah.
Aston
Southampton.
Villa.
Yeah.
How many have I got?
So 10.
Tottenham.
Tottenham, yeah. So I've done Tottenham, done Arsenal, done Chelsea, Fulham, West Ham,
Sheffield United.
Sheffield United. It's harder than you think. this, isn't it?
Is Newcastle?
Newcastle,
Is Newcastle?
yeah,
Okay.
Leeds United.
Leeds,
Should really go down the map, right?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, we've got to scroll down the map. Southampton. I've just gone from Newcastle at the top to Southampton at the bottom and completely ignored my concept of how I was going to do this. So I think that's about 16, 17, right? And yeah, I don't really know any others.
That's good enough.
The last question we've got for you. It's obviously, there was a documentary made about Deep Space Nine a while ago. It's called What You Leave Behind. Obviously, wonderful stuff. Some great stories as well. I think there's a lot in there focused on Aaron Eisenberg, as you point out. The interesting quirk, which no one really cares about, is his character in Deep Space Nine, Nog. My nickname at school was Nog, for completely different reasons,
which we're not going to go into.
So that's my special link to him. So I was nearly in tears when I saw the USS Nog in a recent episode of Discovery. That was beautiful. But there is talk afoot of a Voyager documentary. I believe I've seen a video of yourself publicising it. So if you could, the floor is yours if you wish to speak more about that.
Right. The same group that produced the DS9 documentary is also doing the Voyager documentary. That's 455 Films, and they've already shot some footage during the Star Trek cruise, and they've done 2 rounds of interviews with Voyager actors already. There's still another round coming up, I'm sure, and I think they're doing some type of crowdfunding to get completion money, basically, to make it a little bit better, right? And so it's going to be good, because I think there's a lot more Voyager fans out there than people know. I know that when we first started, we kind of took the place of TNG. TNG ended and Voyager began, and a lot of people kind of refused to watch Voyager because they love TNG so much. And my favorite thing is when I meet fans that are massive TNG fans that refused to watch Voyager until just recently, like this year. The pandemic kind of gave them an excuse to watch Voyager, and then they end up becoming Voyager fans. I love that, when they were like, I don't know why I waited 25 years to watch this show, but I love it. So that's my favorite, when we get these new Trek fans that are old Trek fans, right? They're the old TNG fans that become new Voyager fans. That's my favorite. So for all the Voyager fans out there, and even if you're just a Trek fan, I think you'll find some interest in this documentary when they're done. So, because I do know that they wanted to do filming at Star Trek Destination London, in Germany. They were going to do one in Germany. They're going to come and bring their cameras over there. But of course, all European Star Trek conventions were canceled once COVID-19 began and the lockdown began. So hopefully everyone will be on this vaccine, and we can move forward and get this thing finished. So, but it should be really fun once it's done, though, for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Garrett. We really appreciate it, and we hope to speak again soon. And best of luck next year in your fantasy football adventures.
Yes, same to you, and best of luck in your dynasty leagues that you hate so much. But they hate us back, Garrett, to be fair. Yeah, but the key is, for the dynasty leagues, now I understand it, is preseason games, watching the rookies, which rookie looks at home in that preseason game. That's it, right? Because that's the only way you're going to succeed, is grab one great rookie each season and keep him on your roster. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, that was the brilliant Garrett Wang, or as Neil likes to call him, Ensign Harry Kim, chatting about all things. What a thoroughly top bloke. Absolutely. Who's just now totally made me rethink Jean-Luc Picard's name. And I'm looking forward to putting a sticker over my Amazon thing and changing it to Higginbottom. New episodes coming soon. I think Star Trek Higginbottom. I don't. It's not going to work, is it? It's not going to work. It's when you see occasionally the people put up the film their own ones, Star Trek Worf or Star Trek Janeway, Star Trek Higginbottom. Nah, get in the bin. Didn't have to. Yeah, exactly. The reason he picked Picard is because it's kind of a cool name. They probably picked his name first and then worked all the rest around it. But anyway, we've discussed French being English and English being French and English being French being Scottish and Scottish being Portuguese for enough. So let's get on with the NFL Super Wildcard portion of the show, Neil. 6 games, unbelievably 6 games. Haven't told my wife yet. Might have to let her know soon. 3 games Saturday, 3 games Sunday. we'll pick each game. We'll pick it against the spread and the over/under, and we'll answer a question related to them all. After that, we'll do a quick DFS, because some people might still do that kind of thing. I think the mental, because I think it'd be difficult to split your teams out. But there you go. First game on the slate, as Neil has pointed out to me, the second best team in the AFC have been given what is known in my head is the Shakey's game. What is the Shakey's game? I hear you ask, Neil. The said fancy league with Damashek, Cousin Sal, John Hamm, and Bill Simmons, or formerly Bill Simmons, who was kicked out this year. They meet usually the first wildcard Saturday together and have a terrible pizza from a terrible place called Shakey's. And that game used to be obviously Bengals. So the Shakey's game this year is Colts at Bills. Bills favoured by 6.5, Neil, as I wrote this, and the over-under is 51. The question in relation to this game is this the game that the Bills show their credentials to the whole world?
I think it is. I mean, that's a bit awfully big spread. Indianapolis's defense has been one of the more pleasant surprises of the season. They're ridiculously well coached. They're they're ruthlessly efficient. They're almost German in their ruthless efficiency on defense. But offensively, this Bills team is an absolute joy to watch. They are firing on all cylinders. I do think a lot of people probably would have thought that Sean McDermott was an idiot if Josh Allen had, in a game that the Dolphins needed to win, if someone had got a little bit over exuberant and taken a liberty on Josh last week, but it didn't happen. I just think that in the old days, I very much subscribed to the idea that a great defense will win you a championship. The Colts aren't a great defense; they're just a very good one. But the Bills' offense, I just think, is going to have too much for them, and I don't think the Colts have got the horses to get into this kind of shootout.
Both teams should be like, how has this happened? So the Bills have gone 13-3, and basically their 3 losses were in about half an hour period due to COVID and playing the Chiefs. The Colts were 11-5 and nearly didn't make the playoffs, and somehow they're playing each other in the wild card weekend, 13-3 versus 11-5. Ouch. I hope it's with. I mean, we've discussed Phil Rivers ad nauseum on this show, Neil, and we've loved him and hated him in equal measure in multiple different times. I really hope the Bills win here, if I look at the teams in the AFC, I think they are the best equipped to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs if it went that way. Do I think? Does that mean they'll beat them? No, I'm not necessarily saying that. But I would be interested to see Bills at Chiefs in the AFC title game. That seems like a good game. Now, it's not the usual suspects, so to speak, but I think it'd be a good game. As you said, 6.5 is a big number, though. I don't necessarily see that. I think it might be a shootout. I think the Colts might be winning going into the second half. They are a really good first half team. I'm going to say Bills win. Maybe something like 30-24. So probably Colts just cover, but I'd probably take the over.
Battle of two teams coached by former Eagles coordinators as well. Obviously, Frank Reich, I don't know if anyone's mentioned in the last 12 sodding months that he used to be the Eagles offensive coordinator, so therefore that's where Carson Wentz is coming. And Sean McDermott, who was a long-time Eagles assistant, took over from as defensive coordinator when Jim Johnson died. And bloody hell, I've just realised that was about 12 years ago. So, God, I'm old. Yeah, I mean, I like the Colts. I like Reich. Phil Rivers is someone that our lives will be poorer when he's gone. But there's something about the Bills that I just think, everyone except the Chiefs playing against the Bills at the moment, I think they're bringing knives to a gunfight.
Okay, let's move on, Neil. Rams at Seahawks. Not that we haven't seen this game 74 times before. I know every single time we watch it, it ends like 9-7. It's not a shootout game, is it?
It's always awful.
Yeah, Seahawks are favoured by 4. Over under, to prove your point, is 42.5. How can the Rams win this game, Neil, with John Wolford as their quarterback?
Well, John Wolford has something that Jared Goff doesn't have, and that's at least he's mobile. And while I'm not saying he's like the answer, I just think that we've seen a few head coaches who've been stuck to a particular type of quarterback for a while. They start to look at the shiny new toy in the box and think, how good could I be with that? It's my argument. It's Sean McVay plus good quarterback domination. So you're looking thinking, Wolford might be the prototype for what the Rams might want to do next year. Bring in some competition for Goff. I'm not saying they're going to bench him because they can't afford to. They haven't got a draft pick. I don't think they've got the cap space to go out and sign a veteran. But he does offer them that mobility. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, the Seahawks as well, the defence, it got better down the stretch. Who are they playing? Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Kyler Murray on one leg. Of course, statistically, they got better, yeah. They also weren't playing the meat of their schedule. And when they were winning those games, they put their own offence away. Russell Wilson, say the second half of the season, just looked awful. And I don't mean awful in the sense that, he's not being asked to throw. I mean, no, when he is throwing, he looks awful.
Dominant in our League of Record, which we talked about too much on the show already. Dominant performance in point scoring by Mainzy's Marvels coincided with Russell Wilson being good. Losing in fantasy semi-finals correlates with Russell Wilson being bad. How the Rams win this game with John Wolford is the Seahawks play Seahawk ball, so they keep it tight, run the ball, try and not let it get away from them, even though they're playing the Rams who can't get away from them. So the way they win this game is it just happens because the Seahawks just have to play in a close game.
Yeah. And this is the point that we've made, ad nauseum. It sees that you're banking on being in these tight games when you've got the firepower to blow teams out, but they don't want to do that. As Garrett pointed out, Tyler Lockett is ridiculously volatile. Yeah. He had a 50-point fantasy outing. Was it 15 receptions, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Cardinals? Did diddly poo the rest of the season. Tyler, DK Metcalf, as we know, is an absolute freak. But the 2 games he played against the Rams this year, Jalen Ramsey just erased him. So you're almost banking on, okay, we won't make any mistakes on offense. We'll just hope that you make enough mistakes on offense that our defense can meet us halfway on this, and that's why the spread is so low. I think it would be an upset if the Rams won with John Wolford.
Yeah.
But the Seahawks are almost inviting them to try.
I think I'd pick the Seahawks, but I'd probably pick the Rams to cover again. I think it could be like a field goal game, and I'm not getting involved in anything over 42 because it's going to be some ridiculous 2017 game.
Yeah.
Next game, Neil. So the NBC game again, back-to-back weeks with America's game of the week. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the football team.
Dagnall versus Mannering.
Pardon?
Dagnall versus
Mannering, yeah. Dagnall favoured by 8.5. I want to do a thought experiment, Neil, for this, and we'll do a thought experiment with one of the other games as well. How does a Bucs loss come about? And it can't be someone breaks Tom Brady.
It's a similar thing. It's interior pressure. They have to get into Brady's face early and often, up the middle. Now, everyone always goes on about Chase Young and Montez Sweat and Ryan Kerrigan. That's great, but we know that Brady is not at his weakest coming off the edge. It's going to have to be a Jonathan Allen or Jerome Payne game. Yeah. Now, obviously, the Bucs know this as well as anyone. That's why they have one of the best guards in football, Ali Marpet. But I think it's got to be a case of, if it comes down to, this is a similar thing of a shootout. Washington cannot get into a shootout with Tampa Bay, with Alex Smith or Tyler Henke or Joe Theismann or whoever it is who's going to be under centre for them. You just can't. Don't have the weapons.
No.
Logan Thomas has been good. I think Terry McLaurin is a stud, but I don't know whether he's healthy. Yeah, that's two. They've got Mike Evans might be available. We don't know. Got Chris plus God equals win. You've got Rob Gronkowski, who's still a threat. Antonio Brown looked like Antonio Brown the last couple of weeks. And again, these are against defences that aren't as good as Washington's. But I think Washington's best chance is you've got to keep the score down. And the best way to keep score down is to put Brady on his back early and often.
You look at the Carolina game, Neil, if you take it from Washington point of view. They fumbled a punt return. They allowed a interception in their half and also allowed one drive of, I think it was 80 yards, lots of rushes, and a 21 down. And it's game over at that point because they can't come back from that. No. You got to keep mistakes out, and you need to win the turnover battle probably by 2, I would guess, to be within any chance. They could win it by 2 and still lose, I think. I fully expect them to lose. I'll be honest. You have to have a pretty good memory for a team from Washington winning a playoff game in the National Football League. It's been a while. It was actually against Tampa Bay. But yeah, such is life.
Is that Chris Sims? Was Sims quarterbacking for Tampa Bay?
Yeah, it was. It was.
06.
Yes, it was the Sean Taylor year. So they won
so
a
07,
game.
Yeah.
They won a game and then got beat by Seattle in the next round.
Todd Collins was
the quarterback. Yeah,
caretaker quarterback. Yeah.
I don't expect the Bucs to lose. I actually think they probably will win by more than 10. I'd expect it to be something like, I don't know, 30-17 maybe. It might be closer and then they score a touchdown at the end. I don't see how Washington can keep up because in theory, Tom Brady's going to score 3 touchdowns, I would guess. And I'm not sure Washington can score 21. So, yeah, I'm going to take the under and I'll take the Bucs. And that's obvious. I'm going to do that even if I didn't believe it because that's how reverse jinxes work.
You're correct.
And next game, Neil, is staring shootout in the face. It's Ravens at Titans. That is the early game on the Sunday. Again, no respect for the AFC here. If you are one of the other teams in the AFC, are these the 2 teams you would want to face?
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens are coming in hot. Again, wasn't exactly the meatiest part of the schedule. So what do you do when you're playing your superior team and you're playing against weak opposition? You blow the crap out of them. And that's what the Ravens have been doing. They've been absolutely brutal. They've been dominant. They realised it was probably optimal to tell Mark Ingram to take a pew and go to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in that order. Lamar Jackson has his mojo back. Marquise Brown, you say he came on great toward the back end of the season, but he was fueled by touchdowns. He very rarely goes over like 60 yards or so, but still, he gets them. Whereas the Titans, we know their defense is garbage, but it's going to be cold. It might be a bit rainy, a bit windy. I don't want any part of Derrick Henry running at me very fast in a straight line. I think we could safely say his will be the last 2,000-yard rushing season, and I'm prepared to be wrong on that because I'm not going to be.
In statistics, Neil, in the way the NFL is going, how unbelievable is it that Derrick Henry rushed for 2,000 yards?
It's phenomenal given where we are. But if there was ever going to be a team who was going to do it, and a running back who was going to do it, it was that boy. He's frightening to watch. As I say, I mean, I'm not, a big running back fan. I think I've made my feelings on them very, very clear. But he is an absolute force of nature to watch, and we should enjoy him because he's different. The league isn't full of his type of player anymore. We've seen in the past that the Titans tend to be a little bit like Ravens' kryptonite because although their defense isn't good, the Titans can be a bit physical and get up on them And we've seen the track record of Lamar. If he's down at halftime, he doesn't come back. So, we know the recipe for the Titans to win. It's to put it all on Henry's back early and often, and then wait for I'll get them right in a minute. Wait for the Ravens to make a mistake. These two teams have met 4 times in the postseason. The Jaguars again, the Titans and the Ravens. It's the most games against another opponent in Ravens history, tied with the Patriots. The difference being that all the other Patriots games just seem like they were all in the championship game.
It's weird that these two teams aren't exactly the eldest, and they played each other quite a lot in that short period of time. I think it's Derrick Henry. It's Derrick Henry versus Lamar Jackson, right? That's what it will be. That's what it will be tagged as. I think if Ryan Tannehill has a good game and he gets AJ Brown and Davis involved, then I think that the Titans will win. I find it amazing. Maybe not amazing, but the Titans, the Ravens are favoured by 3 here. Over under is 55. I find it crazy. I think the Titans win. I do think the Ravens are good, and I'm sure next week we get to talk about the narrative around Lamar Jackson if he doesn't win this game. One of the reasons he wouldn't win this game is that I think the other team's better. Like, that's just where we are. But I do think it's a shootout. I think it'll be a really good game. It's probably the one I'm looking forward to the most out of all the games. So I'm going to take the Titans to win the game. Never mind the -3, and I'm going to take the over. So I think it could be something like, 35-28, something like that. I think it should be a really good game.
It's actually we're going to see 2 teams who are very good at running the ball, but also teams with talented wide receivers. It just comes down to a choice of, would you back, if it needed to be made, would you back Marquise Brown to make the game-changing play, or AJ Brown? Yeah. And I'm taking AJ every single day of the week.
Exactly. Next game here, Bears at Saints.
Oh, God.
I know, horrific.
This is Saturday 1:00.
I'm stunned. I think this is the Fox game. I think this is the Joe and
Troy.
The Joe and Troy game. Oh no, sorry, it's CBS. So it's not. It's even worse than that. This is the Nance game with Romo.
Nance and Romo. Oh. You cannot tell me this game hasn't been put on Sunday just to give Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara a chance to come off the COVID list. You can't. Sorry, there's no other reason.
Yeah. Okay. Let's recap, because I may be wrong here. So let's do the broadcasting. So Colts versus Bills is on CBS. So that actually is probably Nance and Romo.
I'll get the game capsules up.
I've already got where it's on. Rams at Seahawks is Fox, which is the only Fox game. So that must mean that Joe and get that game again, because I think they had it already. Washington Tampa is going to be the Chris Collinsworth Al Michaels game.
Okay.
Ravens Titans is the Monday Night Football crew.
Bills Colts is Iron Eagle and Charles Davis.
Okay, it is.
Okay, you said that twice. That's great. Rams Seahawks is Joe and Troy.
Yeah.
Tampa v Washington is Dungy, Tirico.
Oh, is it Dungy and Tirico? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And this is another thing. On Westwood 1, it's Kevin Harlan and Ron Jaworski. I'd rather listen to that. Ravens v Titans is
ESPN, so it's Riddick and Levy, right?
Levy, Greasy, and Riddick. Oh, God.
I don't mind the crew.
I just want to know whose name can you mispronounce in this one, Steve? In an overexcited way. So yeah, the Fox game is
Bears Saints is CBS.
Bears Saints
is Nance.
It's CBS and Nickelodeon.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
it's Jim Nance and Tony Romo. So the Browns Steelers
is the Sunday Night Football game.
Alan Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. Anyway, let's go back to Bears and Saints. Same question that we had for the Washington game, Neil. How how does a Saints loss materialise? What steps would have to take place for that to happen?
Turnovers on defence, because Mitchell Trubisky is not moving the ball consistently against the Saints.
You look at that game last week, the Green Bay game, and review mine and your texts and tweets for details. Like, don't get to the 20-yard line and kick field goals against Aaron Rodgers, because you're going to lose. So, like, it looks like they got battered in that game, and they were not the best team, but there was 3 situations where they kicked field goals instead of going for 4th and shorts in decent positions, which could have made the game much, much closer. They have to score touchdowns on these drives against the Saints, and the Saints are a much better defense than the Packers.
Maybe you can argue that. I heard on the Rotoviz podcast, the Saints probably have the best roster in the playoffs, but in the NFC, the difference between their roster and the Green Bay roster is I'd rather have Aaron Rodgers at the moment than Drew Brees. Little word of warning, though, to Chicago. If you're going to play Tampa 2 against teams when Devontae Adams is in the slot, you're going to get murdered. So don't be doing anything stupid like that. If Emmanuel Sanders or Michael Thomas, if he's playing, don't let him have a free run straight down the field against a linebacker. Come on.
That seems to make sense. Saints are -10 over under is 47.
It's awfully big. Again,
10. 10's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's at home.
Yeah.
8.5. The Tampa 8.5 in Washington is interesting, considering Tampa is in Tampa and Washington isn't in Tampa.
I've noticed.
Yeah, just in case you wanted a map there. Bears at Saints. I'm going to take the Saints. I think it could be a blowout. I'm not necessarily sure that the Saints are any good. I'm just not convinced the Bears are at all good. They'll probably take the under on the 47 just because I expect it to be a blowout. Final game, Neil. Browns at Steelers. Steelers, when I did it, was -6. It could have changed now, given I don't think there has been any further COVID things, but obviously no Kevin Stefanski. I think one of the offensive linemen's out and another coach. Like, congratulations, Browns. You thought you'd beaten the curse and then someone smashed you over the head with a baseball bat. Like, thank you for that, footballing gods. Is there any way the Browns can win this game?
Yeah. We saw last week against Pittsburgh's Rezzies that Mason Rudolph was prepared to go deep against the Browns corners, and they were not up to it. They could not live with Chase Claypool. They could not live with Deontay Johnson. Some of the catches they were making were absolute circus stuff. But I say Mason Rudolph, was my favourite joke now. He was like a clumsy cashier. He was dropping dimes all over the place. Do we think Ben Roethlisberger is going to be as aggressive downfield? No. So we come to a point there that you can't run on the Browns. It's a very good run defence. But you've seen that substandard talent quarterback can roast them deep. You now have to say to aging, falling apart veteran, you're going to have to take a few shots. And that way, if by doing that, maybe Ben Roethlisberger floats a few interceptions up. The Browns win despite the fact that the Steelers' defense is very good, we know what the Browns are. We know what they want to do. And that's pound the rock, make the game short, and not, basically force the Steelers to score on huge splash plays. But, it's when we say about lack of experience, we know that, the Browns haven't been in the playoffs since 2002. Yeah, but it's not like all these players were playing back then.
No,
and, the Steelers are, 3 years out of the playoffs? I know they're a bit more battle-tested. But it's not as if this is a team that's been to the playoffs every year. It is a team that trailed off massively to end the season. You just think that, will the occasion be too much for Cleveland? And especially as it's a lot of people are pointing out to a bit like what the Bills did last year. You've got here. That was your first achievement. You got here. Take your lumps, learn from it, come back next year. Now, I'm not saying that would be seen as a success because you get to the tournament because you want to win it. But I don't think it would take an awful lot for this to look at and say, oh, that was a shame. If they get dicked 51-3. But I don't think they will because I don't think the Steelers have got the firepower to do that to a team.
Agreed, Neil. -6. I'm gonna take the Browns. I think it'll be close, but I do think the Steelers are gonna win. And that's where we are, I guess. We're at 1 hour 15 minutes, Neil. So let's wrap this thing up with our daily fantasy teams of the week.
Mains and Duds. Daily fantasy team of the week.
Show me the money.
Usual for quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex, and defense and special teams. Obviously, only 6 games, only 12 teams. Makes it a little bit more difficult, or does it make it easier? We shall see. Quarterback, Neil.
I've gone for Tom Brady, 6,900, even though this one is past his bedtime.
That is an interesting narrative. For those who are unaware, Warren Sharp loves this one. Tom Brady goes to bed at 7 o'clock at night. That's just a fact. That's written. That's what Tom has told people. And Tom has struggled a lot this year in late games, of which this game is one. It's 8:15 in the good old US of A. He says good old US of A, ironically now. So we'll see if that works. I've gone for Baker Mayfield, 5,400. I think he's going to have to do some stuff to get them going here. So yeah, I've gone for Mayfield. 5,400. I'd probably also done that because he's cheap. Running back 1, Neil. J.K.
Dobbins, 6,600. He only had, I think, 2 more carries than Gus Edwards last week, but he had 100 more yards. He's on nose to the end zone. He's explosive. It's almost as if the Ravens have got a younger, shiftier version of Ray Rice. Because he even wears the same jersey number. He'll be someone to watch next year, but he's someone I'll be watching this week against the Titans, whose defense is terrible.
I have J.K. Dobbins as my running back 2, so I'll bring him up now as my running back 1 because I agree with you. Who's your running back 2, Neil?
Running back 2 is Zach Moss. The Bills don't run the ball because they don't have to run the ball, but I think that maybe they might get into a bit, clock kill, a few red zone opportunities. Maybe they want to, not put Josh Allen through the ringer, as it were. So 4,600. It's not a great pick. I'm not in love with it, but I don't hate it.
So my running back 1 is Derrick Henry because it's a daily fantasy team of the week, and I noticed that Derrick Henry was still playing. So because Derrick Henry's still playing, and it's a daily fantasy team of the week, I picked Derrick Henry. He's 9,200. That's not enough. Like, he should be 10,000.
Yeah.
Wide receiver 1, Neil.
Wide receiver 1 is Tyler Lockett, 6,900. My argument going him over DK Metcalf. It's a 2-word reason, Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, Jalen Ramsey. Taylor Lockett has been ridiculously volatile, but I think the fact that the Rams defense is that good and DK is going to be tied down, Russell's going to have to look for Tyler early and often.
My wide receiver 1 is Deontay Johnson. Cleveland at Pittsburgh. He is 6,200, as Neil mentioned. Circus catches. What I will say is the last time Ben played in the last half that he played, when he decided to ignore his offensive coordinator and threw deep, it went quite well. So I wonder if that continues. So I've gone with Deontay Johnson, 6,200. Wide receiver 2, Neil.
Deontay Johnson, 6,200.
My wide receiver 2 is Jarvis Landry. He's my stack with Baker Mayfield. We went wrong on Jarvis Landry, were we? Just, he is their best wide receiver, right?
Yeah, he suits their system better than Odell Beckham did. I think we can look at his lack of production at the start of the season. I think he was healthy. Mm-hmm. He was battling a hip injury. And we've seen now that basically he's adopted a slightly modified version of his old Miami role, i.e. we'll just feed him. Yeah. Obviously, they want to run the ball, which they never wanted to do in Miami. I think he scored all of their 3 of the last 4 receiving touchdowns and did have a rushing score last week as well. He's not a terrible pick. And the Steelers have been slightly weak to inside receivers this year, and that's obviously where Jarvis makes his money.
Wide receiver 3, Neil.
Wide receiver 3 is Antonio Brown, 6,100. He looked like AB last week. He's a despicable human being. I have no time for him at all, but I'll put him in here because there's money to be made.
This is a money-making exercise, and sometimes you just got to put your things to one side. My wide receiver 3 is originally Hollywood Brown, formerly Bakersfield Brown, possibly back to Hollywood Brown. That's Marquise Brown of the Baltimore Ravens. He has scored over, I think it's 15 points in daily fantasy the last 5 weeks. Scored touchdowns in the last few as well. There seems to be a little bit of a rapport between him and Lamar, which is better than it was at the start of the season when Marquise went full AB. But yeah, so I'm going for Hollywood Brown, 5,400. Who's your tight end, Neil?
Tight end is Eric Ebron. Obviously, he's not a high volume play because we've seen that Ben likes to spread it around, especially Deontay Johnson. But in the regular season, the Browns were absolutely awful against tight ends. I think Ebron did cash in a couple of times against them, certainly in the earlier matchup. So tight end, it's one of those. This weekend, there's not a great deal.
You're not going to volume play, are you?
No.
I've gone for Rob Gronkowski. 4,000. Washington are never good against tight ends, so I expect him to probably get a touchdown. And in theory, in this kind of situation, if he gets a score, that's all you want. You're looking for 9-10 points at maximum, aren't you? And if he gets that, it's a touchdown, it's a reception, and it's probably about 5 to 10 yards. So yeah. Flex, Neil.
Flex is Chris Carson, 5,900. Assuming he's fit, we know he's going to get the bulk of the carries. They love him. Regardless of whether you think he's an effective player or not. If it's going to be a scrappy game, then that means there should be a lot of rushing, and that means they're going to put the ball in Chris Carson's hands. So it's a volume, hoping maybe he can trick his way into a touchdown. He's 5,900. I do miss the days, those halcyon days of yore back in September, where not only did the Seahawks throw, they threw to Chris Carson, as that made him a little mini cheat code, especially if he was this price, and he usually was, but those days are dead.
Those days are long since past. They turned it over 3 times in a game, and Pete said, "That's enough for me."
Yeah, Russell doesn't cook anymore. He's not even allowed in the kitchen. No,
he gets beans on toast pushed under his door. My flex is Manny Sanders. He's a Bears at Saints. Notch again. The Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara thing that Neil points out is very valid. But do we know if they're going to be healthy in terms of how COVID affects them? A lot of players who've had COVID have been seriously affected by it. Obviously, Thomas has been injured as well. So 5,000. Manny Sanders. Yeah, why not? Who's your defense and special teams, Neil?
Special teams is the Seattle Seahawks because of John Wolford. 2,700.
I didn't have enough money for that, and if I need a team to have multiple turnovers to win the game, then I guess I'd pick them. So I've picked the Washington football team, 2,400. I want Tom, I think is what we say on that. So 2,400.
Ohio State versus Michigan.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope it goes like most games between Ohio State and Michigan have gone in recent years, which is an absolute boat racing and a victory for the Ohio State University. Neil, let's recap. Quarterback.
Tom Brady.
I've got Baker Mayfield, running back 1.
J.K. Dobbins.
I've got Derrick Henry, running back 2.
Zach Moss.
I've got J.K. Dobbins, wide receiver 1.
Tyler Lockett.
I've got Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 2.
Deontay Johnson.
I've got Jarvis Landry, wide receiver 3.
Antonio Brown.
I've got Hollywood Brown, tight end.
Eric Ebron.
I've got Rob Gronkowski, flex.
Chris Carson.
I've got Manny Sanders in your defence and special teams, Neil.
The Seattle Seahawks. And it just points out here, my last 3 are EE, CC and SS. So.
SS, thanks for that. Just what we need at this time in the world. Anyway.
Yeah, move on.
I've picked the Washington football team because, come on.
YOLO.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, you're only getting the playoffs once as well. Neil, 1 hour, 24 minutes. It's been spectacular. Any articles or anything you wanted people to read before they watch the games this weekend?
The only other thing I've done this week is my Super Bowl odds tracker for Numberfire. Go in there, have a look, see what the odds in Vegas are telling you about who's going to win the Super Bowl, but see who the Numberfire metrics think might. I'll give you a hint. We think the Chiefs might, but if you're looking for value, there's a few teams a bit further down. Do you think? Worth a flutter, maybe?
Nice. Neil, it's been a fantastic show. Live long and prosper and all that. And these top guys are out.